Hey guys, welcome to Mona Lisa Speaks. I'm your host, William Rentis, owner and operator of Renaissance Estate Sale, and thank you for joining me today. And of course, my special guest today, my very first guest in our new studio, who was able to pass security measures, is my wife, Colleen Rentis. How are you?
I'm very fine. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you for having me on as your very first guest.
I wouldn't have it any other way. I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule with your schooling and everything and your kids and so on and so forth. I know you've been very busy and a little reluctant on coming on here, but and I understand why. But I want to thank you so very much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Okay. So the reason I'm having you on here is because I wanted it to revamp everything that I was doing with the podcast. And, you know, we have talked about this many, many times before. And you had told me I should push through with what I wanted it to do as far as the podcast and help and educating people with the estate sale industry, And you have been very influential in the very beginning of the stages of Renaissance Estate Sale in implementing, you know, tables and tablecloths and CAD register and you know, pushing me to that higher level and making sure that I was doing an elite estate sale if I was going to do it at all. And so for that, I'm grateful because it has paid off and it has been noticed. So thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Okay.
My
so so the purpose of this show now in moving forward into the future is that I have been seeing a change in the estate sale industry, and I'm sure you have seen a change. And I want you to the changes that I've seen is many different companies have been popping up all over the place.
Yes.
Mostly people who are not knowledgeable in the estate sale industry. So what I like to talk to you about is aspects of what a potential client should be looking for when they're looking to, you know, find that elite company.
Well, I remember when we first started doing this, you had a consult for a house that was extremely high end and with many, many valuable items in it. And we had only been in business a short amount of time. And being worthy of a sale like that became our goal. And we worked very, very hard to get to that level where we could handle that, where we knew everything we needed to know, where we had all of our connections in place to sell the items, and the presentation was there and the advertising was there. So I had always told everybody that we had built this business out of a box of business cards, and that is extremely true. I've also said that trying to get this business off the ground was like trying to lift something very heavy up over your head. It was a struggle. It was a definite struggle. So,
well, in hindsight, in listening to you, because I did, although I pretended not to listen, I did take a lot of your advice. You're a very smart cookie.
Thank you. I am.
But, but what I'm trying to ask you is, you seeing the influx of companies coming in.
Yes.
What is the difference between, you know, knowledgeable companies and companies that somebody, you know, your average Joe thinks that he could do this business?
Well, when we started doing this, there were only about 5 other companies that were professional and on a large scale. Families were choosing to do the estate sale on their own. Most people just felt that they could put an ad in the paper and price some stuff out and sell the stuff as a family and split the money. And then we started implementing certain things. Our presentation was above board. We brought the tables in and people would come in and say they felt like they were shopping at a store. Then we had the addition of the credit card machine and other things came into play, like our connection with professional buyers. And other companies started following suit with what we were doing. And it became self-evident that if a family were going to do it on their own, or if a family was going to, you know, hire another company and lose, you know, 30%, pay 30% to a company, that it was probably worth it to pay the company to do it.
Well, I would think this. I would think that it's not selfish, but but fair to say that we set the standard.
Yes, I do think that we set the standard. I can remember our advertising that I would advertise us as the new face of the estate sale business, and what has happened is other companies followed suit.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember when we were doing the sales together, people coming up to me and saying, I stole your whole setup.
Exactly.
To my face.
Yeah.
I'm setting up exactly like you, and I have the little signs around just like you, and I'm doing it just like you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I don't know if it was intended to be a compliment,
or, yeah.
but it was
definitely noticed.
It was my brainchild.
Okay, before we move on, this
Mm-hmm.
is something very important, because I the intentions of doing this new show
Mm-hmm.
and redoing the whole studio,
Yes.
right? And I thank you for coming here again. I thank you
Mm-hmm.
for coming here. But I wanted it to set a new presence with the show,
Yes.
in which I did not introduce in the beginning, because I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get right into this.
Yes.
So this show is called Mona Lisa Speaks Coffee with Colleen.
Oh,
And
yes.
I took the pleasure of making you a coffee,
You did.
as I
You made me
remember it.
coffee.
You like the
Yes.
coffee.
Thank you.
So,
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, enjoy your coffee.
I shall. Thank you. You made it perfectly. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So the premise of doing the show is I will have
You know
coffee.
you're in love with somebody when you know how they take their coffee.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted it to take the show in a whole new direction. So it'll either be coffee with Colleen or cocktails with Joe Blow, whatever it is.
Yes.
But we will make sure that someone is entertained
Mm-hmm.
while they're sitting here with
Yes.
me.
Mm-hmm.
So just to backtrack a little bit, I want your thoughts on what a potential client should be looking for in a company when seeking someone to handle the estate of their loved ones or themselves if they're moving, moving out, or their mom or grandmother's estate. What should they be looking for in a company?
Credentials, references, experience, that they be bonded, that they be insured. Also, I would say that the company be a full-time company, and that the company not be a part-time company,
Mm-hmm.
because there are several companies that are doing the estate sale business as a side gig, and so somebody is hiring them and trusting their house to them and trusting their valuables to them, and they're not a priority.
Right,
So
and I think that
a lot
most
of stuff
people.
is not researched,
Mhm.
and I mean, we have found things in closets, we have found things in cabinets, we have found things in cookie jars, and
Of significant value.
yeah, because we would clean everything.
Mm-hmm.
I cleaned all of the glass. People would come in and say how beautiful the sale was, and they didn't know how dirty I was the whole week. Wrist, elbow deep in suds.
Yeah,
cleaning.
that's the downside of the
Yes,
estate sale.
That's the less glamorous side.
The less glamorous side.
I would be all week with no makeup and my hair on top of my head, cleaning the glass, cleaning the house, making sure everything was perfect.
Well, you look lovely today.
Thank you. And then I would show up the day of the sale in a dress, and nobody would know how unglamorous I was the whole entire week.
It's true. It's the dark side of
Yes,
the estate
it
sale
is.
industry.
It is. It's
And
like
I
show
think that
business.
I think that everybody, regardless of your credentials, but if you're doing the estate sale business, I think everybody, goes through the same thing in the sense of, the dirt and grime, and the customers don't see
Yes.
that side of what the work that went into conducting an estate sale, and and putting it all together and making it happen for them.
Yes. I think one of the more memorable sales that we did, though, was the house that we had done that was hoarded. It was so hoarded that you couldn't walk, and we set the dining room table up for the sale, and the family came in and they cried.
And they cried because
Yes.
they hadn't sat in the dining room in 12 years.
They hadn't seen the dining room like that in over a decade, and so it's things like that that you remember, and that made it worth it.
Right, it made it worth all of the work that we put into it. Absolutely. And so I started doing this podcast because I wanted potential clients to understand the value in the estate sale company they choose. I say that not for myself, but I say that for anybody who's in this business, right? So anybody who's in this business should have enough knowledge, or at least the resources for, you know, reaching out to someone if they found something significant and being able to, you know, pinpoint what it is and you know, getting the most value for it for their client. And I find often, more often than not, that clients would tend to liquidate before calling an estate sale company, and they will make a mistake every time.
Yes.
Because either there's someone took advantage of them, and you know, I just recently spoke to you in reference to that. I won't go into details as to, you know, which client or whatever, but they liquidated hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff for $10,000. So it's just ridiculous. So I always try to, you know, do these videos and educate the public in what they need to do and so on and so forth. But
yes, when everything has been liquidated ahead of time, there is really almost no need for an estate sale company. If there have been several professionals brought in, you had someone come in and take the car, you had someone come in and take the jewelry, you had someone come in and take the antiques, and what's left to sell, and then they're stuck now having to pay a clean out company to take out the other stuff, which could have possibly been cut in half.
That's correct.
Because we can't do an estate sale with nothing there.
That's absolutely true. And so I guess the moral of the story is, don't put the cart before the horse, right? And potential future clients, if they're watching this podcast, and maybe they will get some type of idea on what to do, and, you know, the company, make sure that they do their homework and speaking to, you know, a representative and asking the questions that you pointed out, making sure that they have references, making sure they're insured, making sure they're bonded. All of those things you and I have put into place, even when they weren't even necessary. But as you said to me, it is important, if we're going into a client's home, that one day this business will be regulated by state and government, and you wanted it to make sure that we were prepared for it, right? So where everybody else would fall off the cliff, we had all our ducks in a row and maintained that over all of these years, right?
Yeah. I wanted all of our ducks in a row, because when you're in front of a client, you speak with more confidence when you know you have everything that you're supposed to have, as opposed to crossing your fingers and hoping that they don't ask.
Right. I understand that. That makes sense. And so it just brings me back to, you know, when I think back on clients that I had and contracted with them, and then after the fact, after the contract, they said that before I came, they sold this, or they liquidated this, or they found someone in the newspaper or the internet, and they called them in, and they came in and they offered them a ridiculous number and walked away with the prize, right? So I'm always down the back of my head, and I do these shows to, and so that people can understand, before you do anything, speak to a representative. Before you donate, before Uncle Joe comes out of the closet and say, Grandma promised me that painting on the wall, speak to someone knowledgeable, professional, and that could guide you in the right direction, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I agree with you.
So, in conclusion, I want to thank you for your time and making the time for me, especially. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you coming and giving a little input. I'm sorry for the security, but those are measures that I take. They
were pleasingly rough.
I'm sure they were. Okay. So, as my guest was here and given her input, who has been very influential in Renaissance Estate Sale from the very beginning, and I wanted her to be my very first guest because I thought she deserved the position of it. We have more guests lined up that will come, and they will sit with me and discuss this industry, from clean out companies to attorneys and so on and so forth. So here's to our cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee.
Thank you for joining me.
No problem, sweetheart.
Until we speak again.
Yes.
Mona Lisa speaks.